I'm Karlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Karlin Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, karlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hey, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I do Monday through Friday on this here YouTube channel, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and on Rumble, where we talk about all aspects of the culture war, but with a heavy focus on the far left, because the far left is controlling everything. The far left controls all the institutions, and quite frankly, it's just they're more entertaining for me right now than the right is, because the conservative right are fighting amongst themselves every single effing day, shooting themselves in their circular firing squad. The left is actually being productive and continuing to solidify their stranglehold on the culture, doing all the crazy things in schools, doing all the crazy things with gender, doing all the crazy things that are driving our world into a Marxist cultural revolution. So that's where I focus most of my time, on the cult. And today we're going to do something that I've just so first of all, I want to apologize for being late. I'm about 17 minutes late, but it wasn't my fault, I swear. So I just got done an interview with the illustrious, the wonderful, the beautiful Mel K. Now, I love Mel K. If you guys aren't following Mel K on Rumble, I don't think she's on YouTube anymore, but she's over on Rumble. Go follow Mel K on Rumble, because Mel K is one of the few people that gets it. I adore Mel K. Shout out to Mel, because she's also, by the way, Mel K and her husband Rob watch Socialism Saturday religiously. They may not be in the chat with us, but they watch Socialism Saturday and they know what it is, and they are able to repeat the concepts back. And she does a great job covering more of the globalist stuff, the WEF stuff, all that stuff as well. So shout out to Mel K. But the reality is that Mel K ran a little bit over time in our interview today, and so that's why I was late. So I don't want to put any shade on her. We love Mel K, but it's Mel K's fault I was late today, all right? It wasn't my fault. It was her fault. But we had a great conversation. And when it comes out, I do hope that people take the time to watch it. And maybe I got to get better about clipping stuff and making it available on the channel and stuff like that. But I already make way too many clips as it is. Anyway, we're here. We made it. And today we are going to watch, you guys know that one of my favorite topics is when irresponsible psychologists try to target children with autism to trans them. One of my favorite topics. And I found a presentation that we're going to watch here today on exactly that topic. It is from a podcast called Over the Binary. Over the Binary. And we're going to talk about what we're watching after I get this member chat from Naruto. Thank you for being a member of my channel for 4 months, Naruto. Did you see some stupid federal judge threw out the Disney lawsuit against DeSantis? Disney had a legitimate... Yeah, I have issues with that, man. I think that judge was wrong. I think that was wrong. But what can we do about it? Nothing, really. So I guess it is what it is. Yes, that is the Mel K Show. So I highly recommend the Mel K Show to everyone. She's great. She is one of the few people that actually gets it. I love her and adore her. Anyway, back to this. This is a podcast called Over the Binary, and it is from a channel called Gender Wellness of Los Angeles. And the one that we're going to be watching today is called Autism and Gender Diverse, Transgender plus Non-Binary People with Dr. Lori. For reasons not understood, gender diverse people are 3 to 6 times as likely to, or I think she meant more likely to be autistic than cisgender people. In this episode, Casey and Grace welcome a special guest, Dr. Lori, to discuss the connection of autism and diagnosis among gender diverse populations. Dr. Stevens is a developmental psychologist who has been working with children, teens, and young adults on the autism spectrum for 25 years. She currently serves as the Help Group's Senior Director of Autism and LGBTQ programs. Isn't it funny that there is an entire group dedicated to autism and LGBT plus Q plus, we can't forget the Q plus programs. Isn't that funny? According to Spectrum, a prominent publisher of news and analysis about autism research, people who do not identify with the sex they were assigned at birth are 3 to 6 times as likely to be autistic as cisgendered people are, according to the largest study yet to examine the connection. Gender diverse people are also more likely to report autism traits and to suspect they have undiagnosed autism. And apparently they're also really prone to diagnosing themselves with autism. They do that too. And so we're going to watch this presentation here today and we're going to talk about it. It's only an hour long, which means it'll probably take us at least 4 hours to watch, which is too bad because we don't actually have 4 hours today. We're actually going to have to work through this one at a clip, but I have a couple other orders of business before we get started. Number 1 order of business, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can subscribe for free, and I definitely recommend that the bare minimum you do is subscribe for free. Let me pop the link in the chat just in case you guys are lazy and not looking at the description. There you go over on YouTube. There you go over on Rumble. Make sure you're subscribed for free. But if you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business because I'm 100% funded by you, please sign up for $8 a month or $80 a year. You get a lot of free perks. Well, they're not free because you're paying for them, but you do get a lot of perks when you sign up, to include 2 Zoom calls with me every single week. One of those Zoom calls is taking place at 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight. So you now have time in between when you're hearing this now and 7 p.m. to head over to the Substack and sign up. And once you sign up, just go to this email right here, right in the middle of the screen, and you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the email. And down at the bottom, underneath this red box right here, you're going to find your Zoom link access for the Zoom call tonight, the Zoom call on Wednesday. We're also doing a Bitchcraft this coming weekend, which I'm not sure I actually put in the newsletter, but I will update expeditiously. Anyway, You will find your access for the perks underneath the red box. You will find your access to the supporter Discord underneath the box. And that's how you get access to the Zoom calls that we do. They're awesome. If you've never been to one of our community Zooms, I definitely recommend it. And yes, Bill just signed up on the Substack the other day, joined us for movie night last night. We had a great movie with Dangerous Beauty. It was awesome. I'm not sure that's the newest link though, Jude. I'll double check and make sure. I'm just not sure it's new. I'm gonna double check, make sure everything's okay. Anyway, it may be correct. I just don't remember, and I want to make sure. But community Zooms are awesome. They're a perk that not many people take advantage of. I really wish people would, because you come and meet members of the community. We talk about whatever's going on. It's a nice little support group. And so definitely, if you're a supporter, please take advantage of the community Zooms, because they're honestly one of the best parts of my week. And I think that everyone should take advantage of them because they're awesome. Thank you, Terry, for becoming a new YouTube member. Fun fact, guys, I now have over 100 members on the YouTube channel, which is pretty great. And I want to thank everyone who has a channel membership. Some of you have been gifted channel memberships, but I appreciate you as well. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it. Do I still feel traumatized from last night? A little bit. Yep, we're not going to talk about that right now, bot. But we are going to talk about something else related to drama before we get started. So that's the important thing. Also, another important thing is the Unwoke Art store is up and running, and I got a couple sales right now going on in the Unwoke Art store. And you can get 25% off a couple of designs. The first design that you can get 25% off of is the brand new radical anti-democracy extremist design. You can get this in all sorts of colors. Of course, I always prefer the black, but this one gave me an opportunity to do some colors I don't normally do. Like I got a nice military green, which I don't normally like, but I actually think it looks pretty great. We've got it on purple. We've got it on navy. I got to do a Kelly green. I love Kelly green. I'm Irish. I love Kelly green, and I never get to put clothes on it. So I put designs on it rather. Rottweiler joining the cult. Valued Rottweiler, we love you so much. So you can get that on up for 25% off in the Unwoke Art store right now. It comes on hoodies and all sorts of other stuff too. I think it's a rad design. The reason we're doing it is I got put on a list of radical anti-democracy extremists. And so we want to celebrate that by making a design, because really, we of course know that when socialists say democracy, they really mean socialism. And then in honor of James Lindsay finally discovering that socialists always lie, I wanted to, elevate the iconic socialists always lie design that I made months before James Lindsay was pointing out that they always lie. And you can get that right now in the Unwoke Art store for 25% off this week only. The discount is taken at checkout, so you can pick out any item with these designs and you'll automatically get 25% off, which I think is pretty cool. Naruto, thank you for the super chat. I still can't believe stepmom Deb deleted her Twitter account mid-stream this weekend. Well, that's funny you say that, Naruto. That's funny that you say that, because that's one other thing that I want to talk about before we get started, because of course we had a drama stream, and we're not going to do drama today. We're actually going to do the autism thing, but I want to address this because it's funny. So on Saturday, after Socialism Saturday, I did a Nitwits episode about one of our favorite grifters, Deb Philman. Now, Deb Philman has been a pain in my ass for several years now because she just won't shut the F up about me. But I decided to show some of Stepmom's Deb tweets on my stream on Saturday rather. And apparently Stepmom Deb didn't like me showing the tweets that she herself sent on her own account. And she hated it so much that she deleted her entire Twitter account midstream to prevent me from showing the tweets. Now, Deb, of course, failed because I already had the tweets preloaded in my browser. So Deb deleting her Twitter account didn't actually accomplish much of anything other than giving us the epic victory of getting stepmom Deb to delete her Twitter account. And if I'm honest about it, I'm kind of thinking about putting this screenshot on a t-shirt with a heading that says the art of the trigger. The other thing that we got Stepmom Deb to do was Stepmom Deb, I reacted to one of her videos on the stream just to see if Deb actually knew what she was talking about. And I have to say, Deb does not know what she's talking about. She has learned nothing in the intervening years, probably because she spends so much time reeing and complaining on Twitter. But the video that we reacted to of Deb's was so bad that Deb actually privated the video on her YouTube channel so you can no longer find it. That's how bad it was. So, Deb, I'm very sorry that you don't know as much as we do about what's going on in the world, girl. I promise you, if you just remove the giant stick from your ass and get laid, preferably by a man that's going to tie you to the bed and dominate you consensually because you need to get taken out of control, Deb. If you just do those things, you're going to be able to relax and maybe actually learn a thing or two about what's going on in the world. And I think that that would be better for everyone, personally. That would be great. But the other thing that happened is this crazy bitch, Una, and apparently I'm pronouncing her name wrong, but I don't actually really care. Una, who has 10,000 followers on Twitter, is really upset about me pointing out that she wrote a thread that was stupid. And so she's still crying about me today. So I just want to do shout out to Una. No one wanted to read your essay, Una, because we don't really care what your essay says. Una wrote this whole fucking tweet that was like an esoteric essay from some like random scholar that I'm apparently supposed to know the name of, but I don't because I just don't care. And then she came into my feed, like she came into my YouTube comments complaining that I refused to read her essay. And now today, look at this bitch. Look at this bitch who apparently she says that she doesn't care about anything that I say and I'm irrelevant to her, but she wrote a whole Twitter thread about me today. She wrote a whole Twitter thread about me. It's still, look how fucking long this Twitter thread is. It just keeps going. I haven't even read it yet. She wrote this like I didn't even get a chance to see this. No, Una thought that Nick was me, which was pretty great. Tayton, Sleepy Joe, how about Sleepy Stepmom Deb? Oh, ain't that the truth, Tayton? Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? So do you guys mind if I just read this Twitter thread that she wrote about me? Because I literally haven't read this and I want to. Can you guys indulge me just 5 minutes and then we'll be serious? I promise. If you don't want drama, come back in 5 minutes. Go get a cup of water. Go take a bathroom break. Go just 5 minutes, okay? I just want to read this and I haven't had the chance to yet because I've been doing other things that are far more important today. So let's see. Una says, "Oh, Carlin, I'm so sorry." She likes to be tagged because Una watched my whole video about Deb, like probably seething and coping the entire time. "Carlin has featured me in her latest bullying and self-satisfying video." Well, I featured her because she wrote a Twitter thread about me. Not that I actually care what Una has to say. She is mispronouncing my name, of course. Well, then you should have taught me how to pronounce it better, Una. And unable to recognize the work of Václav Havel, but she considers herself to be the greatest analyst of socialism. Una, how I analyze socialism is I watch real socialist activists in the real world. It's like ethnographic research, Una. I'm not reading fucking esoteric essays from some random poetry journal from 100 years ago because I don't care to read random esoteric essays from a poetry journal 100 fucking years ago. Oh, is the Czech president? Like, I don't care about the fucking I don't care about the Czech president. It makes no difference to me what that person has to say. So why would I care about reading your esoteric essay on the topic? That's not what we do here. We watch real socialists in the real fucking world right now, and we talk about what they are talking about right now to know what they're doing right now. I don't care about a communist from Europe like whenever the hell he was relevant. She claims here that she blocked me over my distaste for her shop. No, I didn't. I blocked you because you're a bitch, which is typical of Carla. No, my issue was this. What did I say? Art is about evoking emotion. True. So since I've obviously triggered you, I say it's art. True. Hey, Una, did you ever notice in my videos I display art? First art I painted and then, well, okay, so this was back when I had paintings behind me. Like Una has, oh my God. This tweet is probably like 3 years old. And the reason I know that is I tweeted it back when I had paintings on my wall that I had painted. And I don't have, like, these are not paintings that I painted. This is Create in Romero Brito. So, like, Una has been saving this tweet in her back pocket, pissed off for at least 3 fucking years. This is how crazy these people are. Who saves screenshots of tweets from 3 fucking years ago to, like, trot them out, like, to complain about them, like, 3 years later? Seriously, Una, get a life. And I was right. She isn't an artist. She isn't an activist. Well, art is in the beholder, Una, and I do sell a lot of stuff online from people who like the stuff I create. And so you might not think it's art, but yet I appear to be selling more stuff online than you are. So things have the value that people are willing to pay for them, Una. That's literally what the free market is. She isn't an activist. Well, that's up for debate from a lot of people who would disagree with you. She's a deceitful, insecure bully and can't even fathom relationships or friendships or even a sense of duty that doesn't revolve around her. Like I said, she's typical. Una, I can't fathom relationships. I've been married for over 12 years, Una. Are you even married? Like, I can't fathom a relationship and yet I've been married for over 12 years. How exactly does that work? I have a larger community than you do, Una. Like, for fuck's sake. These people are so unhinged. I swear to God. I swear to God. Look, she, from July 10th, 2021, Una today is pissed off about something I said on Twitter in July of 2021. Una, it was almost 3 fucking years ago. Can you please get a life, bitch? These people like to say I don't do anything, but, like, I don't actually spend time worrying about some random tweet from 3 goddamn years ago. When I said, what if the entire purpose of my Twitter was a piece of performance art that exposes the bullshit on both sides? Well, that was prophetic, wasn't it? And ever since I sent that tweet 3 years ago, what have I been doing, Una? I've been exposing the bullshit on both sides rather effectively, certainly far more effectively than you. Una just keeps screenshotting tweets that I sent 3 years ago. After she did this because I labeled her precisely what she is, a bully. So Una says CRT is a manipulation of power and insecurity using tactics which are basically bullying. No, well, that's actually not what CRT is, Una. That's actually not what it is at all. And I said, honey, I studied bullying for 10 years. What are your specific credentials on the topic? Well, that's true. I did study workplace bullying for a really long time. Una says, that's not what I said, typical bully. So Una thinks I'm a bully because I pointed out that I studied bullying for 10 years. And she threatened to write Brandon at the time because I was still involved with Walkaway. Okay. This isn't bullying, Una. This is actually just stating facts. Anyone who knows me at all knows that when it comes to this particular subject, I know a thing or two. Well, it is actually ironic, Una, because you do actually know some stuff when it comes to the left, but you're such a psychotic bitch that it doesn't even matter. And apparently your knowledge is like limited to communist dictators in Europe from the days of yore. Well, I'm sorry, Una, that's not the type of analysis that I'm doing. I'm doing real world analysis right now. Let me remind, she simply mocks, but I don't even know who this person is, and belittled it because she gathers around her audience that I can only assume she doesn't respect the intelligence of. Oh, guys, so now you guys know that Una thinks that I don't respect your intelligence. In fact, I think I actually respect their intelligence a lot more than you do, Una, because what I do is I show my audience primary source evidence, and I let my audience decide for themselves what they think of the primary source evidence. That's actually what I do. So I think I'm actually deeply respectful of my audience and their time and their attention because I give them all the tools they need to understand this stuff for themselves and I let them go. You would try to browbeat an audience into like only looking at the things that you want them to look at. I'd like to see the full exchange. I'm sure you'll be able to go back and search her Twitter. Yep, because I never delete tweets. I'll leave you, reader, with something of substance. As for my friend, the cowardless, what are we gonna call Deb for deleting her Twitter account in the middle of a stream? Cowardess? I don't know. I don't know if that's the right word for it. Stepmom Deb Philman and the town crier Carrie Smith. Imagine what kind of person sees the world. Where all relationships are commiseration. Una, you are literally the one commiserating. You are literally the one commiserating. Note, she also said I wasn't useful. Yes, Una, because you have derangement syndrome. I cannot work with people who have derangement, Una. If you are not capable of processing primary source documents, you are not useful to me. I'm very sorry. It's me, not you. I only want people in my life that are capable of processing primary source documentation. You are obviously not capable of doing that because you're off your rocker fucking deranged. Treating people like they have utility rather than as an individual is exactly what this random Czech fucking whatever the dictator was explaining in The Power of the Powerless Needs to Be Understood and Defeated. What the fuck does that even mean? Oh my god. Perhaps one day Carlin will stop debasing her value. She certainly seems to itch for a strange form of fandom where she can claim artistic license to justify her role in assisting totalitarian creep. What? So now I'm assisting totalitarian creep? How exactly am I doing that, Una? By tweeting words that you don't like and not bending the knee to your woke fucking bullshit? I'm assisting totalitarian creep? Oh, he was the first non-communist president of the Czech Republic. Is that what that is? Well, why does that matter to me? I mean, I don't mean to be like a dick about it, but like I'm sure it matters to a lot of people. But what I'm interested in is socialist activists in the United States today. That is all that I'm interested in. Una is welcome to go and study the Czech Republic all she wants. That does not mean that I am obligated to be interested in the fucking Czech Republic. Perhaps one day Carla will stop debasing her value. She certainly seems to itch for a strange form of fandom where she can claim artistic license to justify her role in assisting totalitarian creep. In my book, and this shouldn't surprise anyone, that doesn't make an autist. It doesn't even make someone a totalitarian leader. It simply makes them a phony creep. So I'm a phony creep because I'm not interested in the Czech Republic in the fucking 90s? Okay, Una. All right. Yeah, you're the one that gets to create all the definitions for what matters and what doesn't, Una. Apparently. Carlin, go ahead and put this in another video if you like. I will. Thank you for your permission, bitch. Perhaps one day you'll let go of your juvenile joy and find real purpose and joy in art over artifice. Perhaps rather than making a spectacle of how you view the world, you'll simply view and experience it. Una, I don't have to take advice from you. I am very clear on my perspective. I am very clear on what I'm doing. I am very clear on what my mission is. I am very clear on what my focus is. I don't need to bend the knee to what you want me to do when I blocked you 3 fucking years ago for whining in my Twitter. Now, that would be much more than simply useful. It would be artful. Meanwhile, and get ready, another long tweet is coming, and it's a quote, Carlin. Oh my god, and then she wrote this whole fucking long thing. I'm not reading that. I'm not reading it. I'm not reading it. I'm not reading that. Sorry, Una. I'm not reading a long fucking esoteric tweet that has nothing to do with the reality of what I work on at all. But thank you for thinking so much about me today. I appreciate it. You've given me some amusement. And now we're going to focus over to things that matter because I'm on a schedule today and hopefully we can get through a whole bunch of this stuff. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of having that moment of zen. I appreciate all of you. I want you guys to know, this is the type of bullshit I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. If I ever yell at you in the chat because you're whining, just understand that is the type of bullshit I literally have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Every single day to do this. Because these bitches on Twitter will not shut the F up. And so if I ever yell at you in chat because you're getting in your feelings, just know that if you had to deal with half of the stuff that I have to deal with, you would probably be cowering in a corner, curled up into the goddamn fetal position. These assholes have created me like I am, okay? I used to be way nicer before I had to deal with bullshit like that every single day on the internet. Anyway, let's get to work and do real things. Because Una, what we like to do is actually watch people in the real world, not the fucking president of the Czech Republic from the 90s. And so what we're going to do now is watch people in the real world talking about autism and gender diversity. Can we all do that? Is everyone on board? Can we mount the like button, please? All right, let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to Over the Binary, the official podcast of Gender Wellness of Los Angeles. My name is Grace O'Connor. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Grace sounds like trans. I'm going to turn my mic now.
I'm Casey Weitzman, she, her, and the president and founder of Gender Wellness of Los Angeles for the past 30 years. It's been my mission to normalize being transgender and gender diverse. In my practice, I enjoy working with transgender youth and their families, as well as adults and allies. And together at Gender Wellness, we provide support groups, monthly blogs, and podcasts.
Why do they look exactly the same?
That we'll talk about as we go through today.
Great. Yes, we will. And today we're going to be talking about the connection of autism diagnoses among the gender diverse population. Just a few stats to get us started. According to studies, and for reasons not completely understood, maybe we'll understand a little bit more today, gender diverse people are 3 to 6 times as likely to be on the autism spectrum as cisgender people. Nearly 70% of autistic gender diverse adolescents say they need medical gender related care. And 32% say their gender identity has been questioned because of their autism diagnosis, which must be very, very traumatizing. And with that said, we'd like to welcome our very special guest today, Dr. Lori Stevens. Dr. Stevens is a developmental psychologist who has been working with children, teens, and young adults on the autism spectrum for over 25 years. She currently serves as the Help Group's Senior Director of Autism and LGBTQ+ programs. Previously, Dr. Stevens serves as the Director of Clinical Services for Education Spectrum for over 12 years. So welcome, Lori Stevens.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
It's great to have you here. So maybe we can start a little, maybe at the beginning. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your organization, about the Help Group and Kaleidoscope LGBTQ and why they were formed.
Sure. Well, the Help Group has been around since about 1975. And it's a large nonprofit agency that runs a variety of non-public schools. So schools for neurodiverse children and children with emotional and trauma backgrounds. And then we also have clinical programs. So we have an outpatient service, mental health services, and a lot of programs for underserved children. And as a clinician myself, what had happened is I come from the autism world and have been working with autistic clients for about the past 30 years. And I started to notice in my practice that more and more of my clients were coming out to me as gender diverse, non-binary, transgender. And I started to think, this seems like it's a higher proportion than I would have expected. And at the same time, in the Help Group schools, they were seeing an increase of LGBTQIA identities and a need for more GSAs and more affirming supports, which I think had never really been thought about in the special needs populations. So I think people kind of thought, well, you have special needs, you can't also be LGBTQIA, or you don't really understand what it means. And so I started to think this is something we need to investigate, this overlap between autism and gender diversity. And at the same time, the schools were saying we need to have more understanding, awareness, and programming for our LGBTQIA students. And thus Kaleidoscope was born. Kaleidoscope was started in 2018. So it's a relatively new program because unfortunately we got hit by COVID about a year and a half into us really getting our feet going. But at Kaleidoscope, we provide mental health services. So we provide individual therapy, family support, family training, and group therapy. And then we also run a lot of social supports. So we might have interest clubs. We have like a young adult coffee clutch where they meet at a coffee shop on a monthly basis. And, the young adults kind of guide that. And we do a lot of training on the overlap, particularly for therapists and in schools, so that people really become aware of the fact that if you work with the autistic population, you really need to understand the gender diverse population. And if you work in the gender diverse world, you really need to understand autism.
Boy, you sure do. And by the way,
If you
Casey
work
and I
in the
love
gender diverse
Kaleidoscope
world, you really need to
LGBTQ.
understand
Thank you.
autism.
And so many of our
Okay.
clients there, y'all are so well known in the community, and it's
Right.
such a good thing that you provide services to neurodivergent and LGBTQ youth, which is such a need.
Correct.
And I was going to say, we got to you through Jerry Rothman.
Mhm.
So that's wonderful.
I mean, this is obviously a very difficult time. The fact that we have to have, or there continues to be a need to hold the Transgender Day of Remembrance, and most of the celebrations involve reading a list of all the transgender people who were murdered simply for being who they are. And, it's 2023, and we're all hoping for the day that we don't have any names to read at all, and people just come to accept that you are who you are and you're a fantastic person.
Yeah. And by the way, just to kind of add on to that, we're in Southern California, and West Hollywood is a wonderful LGBTQ affirming city. And, they have their annual event, and they are having their Transgender Day of Remembrance in WeHo on Monday from 6 to 9 p.m. At the West Hollywood City Council Chambers, which is at 625 North San Vicente Boulevard. It's an amazing event. I've gone to it. I'll be there Monday night, and we'll be doing more honoring of those who have, experienced violence due to their transgender and non-binary existence. If you want more information on that, go to www.weho.org/#calendar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So Lori, could you describe for our audience what autism is, and for clarity, touch on some of the terms which may come up today, like neurodiverse, neurotypical, autism spectrum disorder, gender diversity. We think you would be the perfect person to try and make some sense for us and our audience.
Sure. I'm not sure if I'll remember all of the terms that we might use, but certainly I will attempt to clarify them as I use them also, in case I don't get to them. The concept of neurodiversity, because I think it's easiest to start with the broadest concept and then we can work our way down to some specifics. But neurodiversity is simply the notion that brains form differently, right? So neuro kind of implies brain and diversity implies difference. And for a long time, there's been this idea that everybody kind of has the same brain. We all think the same, we all act the same, we all react to the same. And that certain people who had unusual reactions, that they were different, and that it was seen sort of as a bad thing. And so the neurodiversity movement is here to kind of say, you know what, there really is no such thing as a neurotypical brain. That's kind of what people have been using as the opposite
Everyone is
phrase,
autistic.
is neurotypical. But I mean, between the three of us.
Oh shit. I didn't mean to do that. My bad. My bad. Oh no. Oh no. I ruined everything. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Most of the self.
I was just trying to pause it though. I actually have come around to the idea that like everyone is autistic on some level, because I feel like I feel like I wasn't autistic before I started getting into the socialism stuff and also the libertarian stuff, but I feel like getting into the libertarian stuff and the socialism stuff made me like I'm like a self-learned autist. Like I had to learn how to become autistic in order to survive in the land of like libertarian politics and then to be able to like do like the socialism stuff with like is the meticulous bullshit that I need to do. This is not my natural inclination, but I became an autist. You agree, everyday therapist? We are all some on the spectrum of autism. Social well, autists do get infatuated with things, right?
Celebrations involve reading a list of all the transgender people who were murdered simply for being who they are. And, you know, it's 2023, and we're all hoping for the day that we don't have any names to read at all. And people just come to accept that you are who you are and you're a fantastic person.
Yeah. And by the way, just to kind of add on to that, we're in Southern California, and West Hollywood is a wonderful LGBTQ affirming city. And, you know, they have their annual event, and they are having their Transgender Day of Remembrance in WeHo on Monday from 6 to 9 p.m.
Donnie the
at the West
Don!
Hollywood
Shout
City
out Donnie
Council
the Don.
Chambers, which is at 625 North San Vicente Boulevard. It's an amazing event. I've gone to it. I'll be there Monday night, and we'll be doing more honoring of those who have, you know, experienced violence due to their transgender and non-binary existence. If you want more information on that, go to www.weho.org/#calendar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So, Lori, could you describe for our audience what autism is, and for clarity, touch on some of the terms which may come up today, like neurodiverse, neurotypical, autism spectrum disorder, gender diversity. We think you would be the perfect person to try and make some sense for us and our audience.
Sure. I'm not sure if I'll remember all of the terms that we might use, but certainly I will attempt to clarify them as I use them also in case I don't get to them. The concept of neurodiversity, because I think it's easiest to start with the broadest concept and then we can work our way down to some specifics. But neurodiversity is simply the notion that brains form differently, right? So neuro kind of implies brain and diversity implies difference. And for a long time, there's been this idea that everybody kind of has the same brain. We all think the same, we all act the same, we all react to the same. And that certain people who had unusual reactions, that they were different, and that it was seen sort of as a bad thing. And so the neurodiversity movement is here to kind of say, you know what, there really is no such thing as a neurotypical brain. That's kind of what people have been using as the opposite phrase, is neurotypical. But I mean, between the three of us, we might not be identified as autistic, or neurodiverse, but our brains are not exactly the same. We don't all think the same. We don't all have the same reactions to things. We have different strengths and different weaknesses. I'm horrible at math. One of you might be great at math, but that doesn't make either one of us
true.
So there's no such thing as neurotypicality. We need to really think about everybody as kind of being neurodiverse and understanding that there's subsets within that neurodiversity. So having experienced childhood trauma can actually lead to your brain kind of wiring itself in a different way. So you could consider traumatized children and young adults and adults as being neurodiverse. A learning disability is a neurodiversity. So when we look at it, having obsessive compulsive disorder, being anxious, being depressed, they're all neurodiversities. We know that all of these things are caused by what's going on in our brains, in addition to what's going on in our thinking patterns. So autism is a form of a neurodiversity. And in previous years, autism has really been stigmatized and thought of as something that isn't a good thing, and people shouldn't be autistic. You can't act that way, and you can't do this, and you need to just conform. And people really thought that you could be a little bit autistic, or you could be a lot autistic. And none of this is actually true.
Kristen.
So autism is simply defined by a kind of constellation of symptoms
Wait,
that include
Oh, God damn it. I did it again. I did it again. Fuck me. God damn it. I apologize. I'm fucking up today. Apparently, I don't know how the internet works today.
most of the celebrations
Hang on.
involve reading a list of all the transgender people
God
who were
damn it.
murdered simply for being who
I promise I'm never going to pause it again after we
I'm
actually get through
horrible at
this.
math. One of you
Hang
might
on.
be
Where was I?
multi-dimensional concept. So that's kind of what autism
Where
is
was
in
I?
a 10-second, or that probably was more than 10 seconds.
Hang on. I think I found
The
it.
elevator pitch. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that.
Okay, I don't know if that's exactly where I was, but what I was gonna say is like the reason I wanted to pause it is like this notion that some people are not more autistic than others is just stupid. Yeah, I was looking for the symptoms of autism. So where did that symptom slide come up in? What time is that symptoms? There it is. Okay, found it. So like, I'm sorry. Like, if you have been around the Libertarian Party for any stretch of time, you know emphatically that there are some people who are more autistic than others, okay? The Libertarian Party is one giant competition to see who can be the most autistic at any given time. So this idea that, like, everyone is special, but we're all the same. No, 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 no. No, no, no. Some people are legitimately more autistic than others. I'm not saying it as a put down or anything. Autists have their own special talents.
Symptoms
Here we
that
go.
include having some communication difficulties, and it's mostly social communication. So you might have challenges in holding a conversation.
I'm not pausing
you
the
might
video
have
again.
challenges in understanding some of the give and take of kind of pragmatic language, reciprocity.
Exactly. It's a spectrum.
You will have a limited behavioral repertoire, which
Yeah.
means that
Gender might not be a spectrum, but autism sure as shit is. I should put that on a t-shirt.
You might want to, I don't know, talk about the same thing over and over again, or you might have very limited interests. You might enjoy doing repetitive actions or repetitive behaviors. And then there's also sensory sensitivities, which means that many people with autism, but also people without autism, will have an oversensitivity to lights, to sounds, to taste.
I have an oversensitivity to light.
So
maybe I am autistic.
They might not like the feel of certain clothing. They might not like long sleeves. They might not like their hair being brushed. They might not be able to handle being in certain environmental situations because they can be too loud.
That's it. I'm a self-diagnosed autist now. I have an oversensitivity to light, and I've learned how to be an autist because of the libertarians. It must have been true all along. Maybe I was always autistic and I didn't know it.
Too crowded. And so when you see somebody with that constellation of symptoms, along with some other things, that's what qualifies somebody as being autistic. But it isn't like you can be more or less autistic. It's that your constellation of symptoms might cluster primarily in one area, whereas somebody else, their constellation of symptoms might be much more broad. So perhaps you have
everyone needs to affirm me now. I'm autism gender
in every one of the areas that we look at in terms of autism. And so, but that doesn't make you, it's not a linear.
Rottweiler. Those three don't strike me as true believers. They aren't talking full socialist yet. Probably above useful idiots. No mention of queer performativity. Everything we know so far. Totally agree with your analysis there, Rottweiler. One of the things I was thinking at the beginning was this lady with the weird shirt. It's actually kind of a pretty color shirt, but like whatever, it's a weird shirt. This lady with the weird shirt was like, I just want to normalize being transgendered. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know if normalize is the right word, but like, you're not talking, she's talking like a progressive. She's talking like a California, like progressive, right? And then there's a trans woman that she doesn't strike me as particularly like of the queer variety. So it kind of seems like these people are like useful idiots. I'm still interested in what this therapist has to say though. This therapist, like, again, probably useful idiot, but like, I want to hear specifically when they talk about treating people with autism in relation to gender. And it's also interesting, isn't it, that like the useful idiots called their podcast Over the Binary. So it's like, even if they don't understand, they obviously and clearly don't understand that like these ideas come from a community that want to abolish gender entirely. These people don't want to abolish gender. Like, we've got a she, her. Lady in the weird shirt is she, her. I believe the trans lady was she, her as well. I think the therapist is like cisgendered. So it's kind of like an illustration of like how the far left ideas can kind of make their way into the popular like zeitgeist because of the useful idiots who don't know what they're talking about. That just mean well. I think that these people probably mean well, but we'll see how this goes. No, I'm not messing up again. Everyone relax.
Way of thinking about autism. It really
I
is
know
this
how technology
multidimensional,
works. I'm on the internet,
concept.
okay?
So that's kind of what autism is in a 10-second, or that probably was more than 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's the elevator pitch. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that. Do you have any questions or comments, Grace? Or
Yeah, one thing maybe we can talk, one thing comment I can make rather is I read a little article from Harvard Health, and they define neurodiversity as the idea that people experience and interact with the world around them in many different ways. There is no one right way of thinking and behaving, and differences are not to be viewed as deficits. So I guess what I'm wondering, Lori, it sounds like we're kind of moving away from pathologizing neurodiversity. It's becoming more, less pathologizing.
Don't pathologize.
Absolutely.
Autists.
I think there's many articles now that are coming out that really highlight the benefits of being neurodiverse. And we are absolutely working toward reducing the pathology or the pathological thinking in regard to autism, but in regard to a lot of other types of diagnoses, if you will, also. I know there's many autistic advocates who think that autism shouldn't really even be considered a mental health, which it is. It's classified in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual as a mental health disorder. But really, if we think about it, neurodiversity is kind of the same thing, sort of like biodiversity, right? Biodiversity is good. We want things to grow in different ways, and the differences are what makes a lot of our environment grow and continue to expand. And the same thing if you're trying to create new programs or new ideas and you put 5 people in the room who think exactly the same way, you're not going to get very far. You put 5 people who see the world and view the problem from different angles together in the room, and you're going to get pretty amazing solutions. So in that case, neurodiversity needs to be celebrated and needs to be seen as a positive and a benefit. And we need to, and I'll speak specifically for autism, we need to stop thinking that autistic people are broken, that autistic people need to act normal, because there's no such thing as normal, right? That meme, normal is just a setting on the washing machine. We need to really embrace that, and we need to do all that we can to be advocating out there for the rights of autistic people to be autistic. It's okay. That's just who they are. They want to rock, and it's okay. And I work with teachers all the time, and I work with parents, and with always saying we all STEM, right? That idea of rocking or flapping your hands. Everybody does it. We just do things that maybe aren't as noticeable. So I tend to play with my hair. I play with my rings all the time. It's the same thing as this person who rocks. If I'm allowed to do it, why isn't an autistic person allowed?
Well, this isn't about them
it's
like
really quite refreshing what you're
stimming
saying,
though. That's not the
because,
problem.
Obviously,
I'm gonna play with my slime and stim that
but
way.
even just growing up as young kids, the last thing you really wanted to be was to be autistic or to have a friend, because for me, it was like there's something odd or weird about them. They need more help.
Mm-hmm.
Autists are
So
weird.
This talk is so refreshing.
Maybe we should make weird normal again. We should normalize being weird again. Oh shit, it's getting all over my ring.
I even have kids now that want to have their parents understand I'm neurodiverse, I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know if we'll get to that question, but I do want to spend just a couple minutes, and
just because you're different doesn't mean you're transgender.
Do we test for it? Like, since it is a diagnosis still, does someone come to the help group or Kaleidoscope and get tested? I mean, can we send clients there, or how does that work in getting that initial, I don't want to say diagnosis, but at least
Assessment, maybe.
assess?
Yeah. You know, the thing is that we still need to call it a diagnosis, because that's kind of the only way oftentimes that people will be able to get services and to get the help that they need, because insurance is medical diagnosis driven, and medical including mental health in this case. So in order for them to get reimbursed, let's say by insurance or something like that, they will need the actual diagnostic code of autism spectrum disorder. And yes, the Kaleidoscope, and actually through our mental health program, which is called Lumina Counseling. So there's a lot of names of that group. But Lumina Counseling, we do diagnostic evaluations. We have a specialty clinic even, and I know we'll start to talk a little bit more about that overlap between autism and gender diversity, but we also have a specialty clinic for gender diverse folk to come in. Many of them oftentimes are questioning whether they do have autism. And so we're like a neurodiverse informed, but also gender diverse informed a group. And so we kind of know what to look for. And we do diagnostic evaluations for anybody who suspects that they might have autism. They don't have to be gender diverse, but we do have a specialty clinic and a fully informed and affirming clinic for that.
And that's good, because I think in the community that we work with, it's kind of the same thing. We don't want to pathologize being transgender or non-binary, but if you want insurance to cover it or cover any of the surgeries, you have to put at least gender dysphoria as a diagnosis. So it's almost like, it kind of feels like the worlds are kind of similar. To get services and get reimbursed, you still have to have a mental health, diagnosis. So that's good to know that.
Yeah, I feel like the diagnosis can be a good guide too, to kind of help develop a treatment plan. I think in that way, of course, they need it for insurance, but it's also being able to look at the symptomology and be able to kind of formulate a treatment plan that's affirming. And I love that we're moving away from the medical model in so many different fields, right? I mean, transgender non-binary community for the longest time, the medical model was the only way to go. I mean, Casey could tell you stories about, folks who have been in this, working with the trans and non-binary population for as long as she has, and as long as you have, about, a panel of therapists okaying letters for transgender clients, right?
Right. The whole gatekeeping and the whole notion that everybody had to be gender dysphoric, where that hasn't always happened. Many people actually experience genderphoria, euphoria, when they get to dress how they want to, and have any type of gender affirming interactions. So it was kind of.
Are they saying that you don't need to be gender dysphoric to be trans? And that they're trying to frame it as like a good thing? Like, that's kind of where I was going, everyday therapist. I'm just gonna go back and listen to this again. I'm sorry. I should have been paying better attention, but I was just like, that was a little, hang on.
Right? I mean, transgender non-binary community for the longest time, the medical model was the only way to go. I mean, Casey could tell you stories about, folks who have been in this, working with the trans and non-binary population for as long as she has, and as long as you have, about, a panel of therapists okaying letters for transgender clients, right?
Right. The whole gatekeeping and the whole notion that everybody had to be gender dysphoric, where that hasn't always happened. Many people actually experience genderphoria, euphoria, when they get to dress how they want to and have any type of gender affirming interactions. So it was kind of.
So they don't have gender dysphoria, but if they put on an outfit of the gender that they like, then they have gender euphoria. That's like, that's a fetish, guys. That's a fetish. That's what a fetish is. That's an autogynephiliac. No, not every trans person is an autogynephiliac, but that's an autogynephiliac. That's not being trans. That's a sexual fetish.
There's so many parallels. It's interesting that the two identities do overlap the way that they do, because there's a lot of similar history, including, autistic young women used to be sterilized because it was like, well, you can't possibly and should not be allowed to have children, and people were making horrible decisions. And there's a very long history of pretty intense behavioral treatments that people, autistic people, are now able to talk about the trauma that they experienced as a 4, 5, and 6-year-old, being told that everything that came naturally to them was wrong, and that they had to sit like little robots and always make eye contact. And we could talk about eye contact forever, because it's something that drives me crazy, this whole idea of forcing somebody to make
Look at me. Yeah, look at me when I'm talking to you.
I look at me as one of my least favorite. It's like, why? Why?
Because
Why?
it's
And
respectful.
like when a teacher says, look at me when they're giving a homework assignment, it's like, but actually,
listen, man, listen. I agree with the look at me thing. If I'm in person and someone is looking, and I'm like in a meeting with someone and they're looking off over to the wall or something, or they're not making eye contact, I don't think they're listening to me. And I know it's not always comfortable to look at someone. I know that. And by the way, that's not just for autistic people. That's for normal people too. That's not just an autist thing. But it's disrespectful not to look at someone when they're talking to you. It shows, to look at someone when they're talking to you shows them that you're paying attention to what they're saying. It shows them that you're actually listening to them. I'm sorry, like that's ridiculous. These three won't talk about girls at tap. Well, probably not. Probably not, MacB. That's probably right.
that's not the reason why people make eye contact.
No, I would not say that most trans women, are autogynephiliacs. I don't think that that's true, but it is an over, like there are people who say they are trans women that are autogynephiliacs, but I wouldn't say that it's most.
They don't make eye contact so they can remember. Lots of people remember better when they're not looking, when they break eye contact, because there's too much information.
Bullshit. I'm sorry, bullshit. I don't believe that.
Well, one thing I can add to that is, one thing that I'm struck by is a lot of my adolescent clients, Casey, you may have been able to speak to this as well, is, this belief that there's only one trans narrative. There's only one trans narrative, that this is the story, this is how trans works, this is how non-binary works.
Right.
And just kind of getting clients to understand like diversity, the gender spectrum, and where you can be in the gender spectrum. And your journey is going to be very different from someone else's journey. And you may be neurodiverse and non-binary and lesbian. I mean, there's so many variations on this. And I love that you said biodiversity. I mean, it's so important to have biodiversity, right? To get a myriad of opinions.
Right.
Experiences.
Right. And it's so interesting because this is probably similar. I feel like there's a lot of parallels with our practices, because so much of our work is also to try to explain to like our parents what they, them might mean, or, there's just so many things that it's about explaining to the parents, like, gender expression is not the same as transitioning per se. It's like, if that's what your child's doing, don't freak out. It doesn't mean this.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're trying this on, but yeah, like I've had parents last night that it's like the they, them is still, pretty fresh and new for people. So.
Sure is.
Yeah.
So I've got another question for you. It's kind of related to what we were talking about, and this is going to be a two-parter, Lori.
Okay.
Can you define what double minority is and how it impacts the transgender, gender diverse community? And can you also share about maybe unique challenges that are inherent in being gender diverse as well as neurodivergent?
Sure. So double minority status is the concept of a person who's experiencing two devalued identities. So in this particular case, it might be gender diverse and neurodiverse. Um, and
So
then the
intersectionality.
impact of each one of those minority statuses kind of compounds each other, so that the experience of the double minority and multiple minority status person is oftentimes much more trauma, experiences much more trauma, and etc., than somebody who might only have, let's say, one of those identities. And
That's
so,
right, Sin.
so
They don't know the
if you
language.
think about it, it's one thing, when you're transgender and that's your identity, and being able to kind of find your group of people, so other transgender people. But then if you're transgender and neurodiverse, it's kind of like, well, which community do I fit into? Am I in the, or let's just say autistic, am I most comfortable in the autistic community? Am I most comfortable in the transgender community? Is there a community that comes together? And obviously that's going to be a smaller community then. And then let's say that you're Black, autistic, and trans, and then you have an even smaller and smaller. So it's hard. The more kind of minority statuses you present with or identify with, the more difficult it becomes to really find that place where you belong. And that you can be victimized, bullied, harassed for each one of those identities. And when you're
Well,
2, 3, or 4 of them,
you can be bullied and harassed for anything under the sun. People are like, you don't need to have autism to be bullied and harassed. I'm bullied and harassed. Well, I mean, apparently now I'm autistic. I'm learning because I'm light sensitive and I'm a self-learned autist. But you can be bullied and harassed for the clothes you wear. You can be bullied and harassed for your weight. You can be bullied and harassed because you have a different sense of fashion than other people. You can be bullied and harassed because you're a weird kid. That doesn't necessarily mean you're autistic or trans. Let's say one day you're bullied because you're overweight. Well, let's say you lose the weight. They'll find something else to bully you for. Yeah, I got bullied for wearing glasses in elementary school. You get bullied for not having the right shoes. It's like people can bully you for anything.
the amount of harassment and the lack of acceptance that you receive out there in the real world,
That's called
just
life, man. That's
and
called
so I
life.
think it's just very important that people understand right off the bat how much more difficult it is to be autistic and gender diverse. Most people don't understand the autistic community, and they still think it's a bad thing, and I need to change you, and you need to act like you're not autistic. And we know many autistic people masked for years, so they tried to hide their autistic symptoms. They tried to not do some of the things that brought them pleasure. And it's the exact same thing with the gender diverse community. There's been a lot of masking and a lot of hype.
And then it's like you want acceptance. Like, the best place for autists is the Libertarian Party, but these people will call libertarians like racists and bigots and every name under the sun and fascists and all this stuff. You want autism acceptance, lady? The best place in the world for autism acceptance is the Libertarian Party. You will be able to be you will be able to be the autist you want to be in the Libertarian Party. You'll never accomplish anything, but you'll have a group of friends.
And a lot of inauthenticity. So think about how that's compounded when you're trying to mask your autism and you're trying to mask your gender diversity. And so
I know.
And so it's if you're a therapist, especially, just understanding that many of these clients that are walking in the door have a trauma background, maybe not the PTSD type of trauma, but just those years of being told, oh, you're autistic, you're broken. Oh, no, you're a boy, you can't wear those shoes. Oh, no, get a haircut. The negative messaging that has been given to these individuals pretty much throughout their lifetime, again, that's what's coming into the therapy room that really needs to be affirmed, and needs to be worked on. Not the autism. We don't need to make you not autistic. Not the gender diverse piece, because we don't get to determine what your gender is, how you identify, how you express your gender. But understanding that these are people who have pretty much been devalued and demoralized for almost their entire lives.
And do you think that this just popped into my head, but I'm curious, do you think there's a compounding factor to this, in that if someone has multiple marginalizations going on, that each one can't just be considered separately as a trauma, that one will compound on the other and compound on the other, and then kind of antagonize the one below it, and so it starts to compound? I wonder.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's definitely a compounding effect with each additional kind of, again, devalued identity. And so that's part of why it is so difficult. And it's one of the reasons too why what I started to say in the beginning was that you're finding your community. We all know how important finding your community is. And when you come from multiple minority statuses, it's, you know, thank goodness for the internet, right? Because think about those people growing up before the internet who weren't able to log on to chat rooms and discover that there's all kinds of other autistic, gender diverse folk out there. You know, what are the chances? Again, we live in LA, so we're kind of lucky because we live in this huge cosmopolitan place. But we have people, I mean, we have people coming from other countries where they cannot be out in their country, and the only place that they can be themselves is to come in. Like, even the autism isn't always fully accepted, but at least it's not as taboo as being transgender, gender diverse, or even queer. And so that's amazing that the internet exists, but we also need to think about there's a lot of people who didn't grow up with the internet, who grew up with these intersecting identities and felt completely alone and felt like they were wrong, that they were broken, that they did need to conform and change. And that is significant trauma.
Definitely. So as you're talking, I'm just so grateful to know about you and the help group and Kaleidoscope, because it just feels so helpful in the work that we do. And so the question I have for you is, how would a clinician with little or no experience working with neurodiverse and gender diverse persons formulate an affirming treatment plan?
Here we go. This is what I wanted to hear about.
That is a fantastic question. So one of the things that I think is very important, and I think I kind of alluded to it earlier, is certainly as a therapist, if you primarily work, let's say, with the gender diverse community, it is absolutely imperative that you start to get training and become autism informed. And so get out there and listen to the autistic voices, get on the internet and join some of the neurodiverse movement pages and advocacy programs, so that you can really learn about what autistic people need, so you can then be better informed when you're writing your goals and working with your client. And the same way, if you work with the autistic population, you really need to be doing research into the LGBTQIA community and identities and understanding the language. Autistic people are sensitive about the language that is used. So we've really moved back to person first. I'm an
Hang
from
on.
the identity first.
Is that true though? Is that true? Like, so what she's saying is people are uncomfortable being called autistic. Like, I'm not supposed to call people with autism autistic. I'm supposed to call them a person with autism. Like, does anyone with autism actually, like, I use the term autist as a term of endearment. Like, if I'm calling you an autist, it's not because I'm insulting you. So is that really a thing? Are autistic people, because I know I've got a bunch of autistic people listening right now, are autistic people really insulted if I call you an autist instead of a person with autism? Bot prefers autistic. Rottweiler is not uncomfortable. ZXY is not uncomfortable. Like, I feel like people like this are so insulting to autistic people. Yeah, not uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable. It's like they treat autism like, okay, here's one of the things that I've learned. Because I do actually have a bunch of autistic people in my audience. I mean, I think the internet in general has more autism than like most places, but like I do have like a pretty big chunk of my audience has some form of autism, okay? I attract autists, and this has been true my entire life. I'm pretty sure my husband is an undiagnosed autist. Like the love of one of the other loves of my life, besides my husband, who is obviously love of it, but like there are others too. Like autist, they're all autists. All of like the significant men in my life have been autistic, and I don't really hang out with women that much, so that's probably why they're. Anyway, I feel like autistic people like me because I don't bullshit them. Like, I don't lie to them. I don't pander to them. I don't coddle them. I don't go, you're autistic and so I need to treat you differently. I feel like so many people, like this therapist, like treat autistic people like they can be like they're gonna break them if they say something offensive to them. And it's like, bruh, just like I've actually like I've had autists tell me like they're like, Carlin, I like you because you don't lie to me. And I'm like, I know.
So it used to be that we would say person with autism, but autistic people have said, you know what, I'm that's who I am. I am an autistic person, and I'm not a person with autism. That kind of medicalizes it again, right? It makes it sound like I'm a person with diabetes. You don't really ever say you're a diabetic person. And because we're trying to move away from that medical diagnosis or medical thinking of autism, so that language has changed, and the language that you use within the LGBTQ community as a whole, but certainly the gender diverse community, like we were saying before, understanding the importance of pronouns, and understanding the importance of certain language, like not saying, come on, you guys, and just things
Come
that,
on, you guys.
if you can do nothing else but make sure that when you're sitting with your clients, no matter how your client walks in the door, no matter what that client has said, I'm coming in because I'm anxious, that's fine, but ask them their pronouns, reveal your pronouns, ask them,
My pronouns
what
are
would you like to be
Una
referred to?
Bomber.
Do you
Una
want me to
Bomber.
use they them pronouns with everybody? So I have clients, because my clients oftentimes are still children, I have clients who want me to write they them in the notes, and when we're together to use they them, but have asked me, like, if I go to an IEP meeting, to please still use let's just say she her pronouns, because they're not yet out. And so the ease that you can put a client at when they walk in the door, and you just simply say, and what pronouns would you like me to use, and these are my pronouns, this is how I identify, it builds rapport almost instantly. And I know I've had so many clients who just say to me, thank you for asking that. Like, they're not expecting it. And it just really opens the door to let people know it's such an easy thing to do, right? And that's one of the most affirming things. I also really recommend that people always have, let's say, a flag or something like that in their office that just lets anybody walking in, or if you're doing telehealth, kind of behind you, that lets people know that you are a safe space, that you understand. And then in terms of treatment goals, I'm very much into collaborative treatment goals, even when I work with children, because it's the child who has to do the work. So even when the parent says to me, I want him to learn blank, blank, and blank, I'll always say to my clients, well, what do you want to do? Because they are the ones that are going to have to do the work. But we'll
Do
oftentimes
the
talk about,
work.
particularly with autism, I will state, I'm not here. My goal is not to make you not autistic. That's not what I'm going to do. And I will never talk like that. My goal is to make you feel more comfortable. So what are the things that we can do? What are the goals you want to work on? Typically, those are depression types of goals, anxiety reduction, some OCD, or certain, I want to learn to have better conversations. So a lot of my young adults will come in, I want to be a better friend. That's That's cool. I want to learn. It's like, that's fantastic. That's great. What are the things that you think, are stopping you from being the best friend that you want to be, etc. And we go from there. But I will just identify from the very beginning that reducing autistic symptoms would never be a goal.
Okay. It's interesting because I'm thinking again about the parallels, but how to tell a parent, for example, that didn't, that either were able to, like, that they were not diagnosed with autism, or, as a younger person, how to inform the parents, like, well, yeah, well, this is where we're at now.
So, I mean, like, effectively, people are asking, like, why doesn't she want to reduce autistic symptoms? Because, like, what she's effectively saying is, if an autist comes to her and says, I really want to learn how to look people in the eye because people think I'm being rude when I'm not looking them in the eye. And so that's a skill that I would like to develop to reduce my autistic symptoms. She would tell them, nope, nope, we're not going to do that. You're beautiful and perfect just the way you are. And listen, I'm not suggesting that I think autists are things that need to be fixed. I don't think they need to be fixed, but like, there are some instances where it would be beneficial for some autistic people who are farther on the spectrum than others to learn how to overcome their autism and to behave in a way that is more normative in society. And it's not just going to be beneficial for other people, it's going to be beneficial for them too. So that to me seems a little bit disrespectful of the patient to say, you might want to have that as a goal, but I think you're perfect just the way you are. And I don't think you need to change that, even though it's like something that it could be like a simple thing that could actually substantially help their life.
Right? Like, why didn't the teachers figure it out in kindergarten? Or like, why is it now that my kids also struggling with gender and now this? Like, what, it's almost like, what's next? Like, what else? I mean, has that been hard to have to tell parents or explain to them that this is where their child is now? Because a lot of times parents will say to us, well, we didn't see the signs. They didn't show when they were young. Like, they were all femmy and this and that. I don't understand now why they want to be a boy or be non-binary. We didn't see it. Like, how did this happen? Like, is it just a phase or a fad that's going around? How do you work with that, with families that are like, I didn't get it? What are you talking about?
Right. So there's a variety of different tacks to take on that. But one thing that I will say, again, kind of related to language, is I typically will say, it's not that your child wants to be, it's that your child is. Or I realize it could be a young adult also, because there's a lot of autistic, gender diverse folk don't come out. They have to go through a double coming out process. So it's even, again, more difficult for them, because at some point they accept and come out as autistic, and at some point they accept and come out as gender diverse. And oftentimes parents will say, whichever one came first, I was okay with the gender diversity, but now you're telling me my child is also autistic. Like, that is too much, or vice versa. I was okay with the autism, but now you're telling me. And there's just a lot of psychoeducation that needs to go on with parents about what it means to be gender diverse, to be transgender, what a transition is, and how sometimes what the child is looking for, particularly, I think also parents are very confused by non-binary presentations. Like, they'll say, what does that mean? How can my child be
What do
boy
you think
and
it
girl,
means,
or
therapist?
not boy or girl? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
You're right.
And there's
You're
just
right. Correct. The parents are correct. When the parents say that it doesn't make any sense that you're not a boy or a girl, it's because it doesn't make any sense, because it's made up. It's made up. You are a medical professional. You are a psychologist. And you're telling me that non-binary is not made up? Please. any psychologist or psychiatrist who honestly tries to convince anyone that non-binary is a real thing needs to lose their license. Of course, that'll never happen because the entire fields of psychology and psychiatry have been completely corrupted by this woke bullshit. But if the world was fair, they would lose their license because they are trying to convince people of something that has no basis in reality at all. They are literally gaslighting their own damn patients.
Psychoeducation that needs to go on. You need to sit down and talk about what does non-binary mean, and that, what
What
does
do you
gender
think it
fluidity
means?
mean, and explaining that these things are true concepts, are real things,
No,
and that some
wrong.
people don't know their true identity until they're much older. We all know people who came out at 60.
Yep.
Right.
Clients who are in their 70s who are just coming out now. There's whole
What?
factors that go into feeling safe enough to come out.
Yep.
Socioeconomic and trauma and family history. Like,
Wow.
genetics.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Can you imagine transitioning your gender at 70? At 70? Like, oh my God. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. They are kind of trying to bridge the gap between autism and queerness, but they are still far from spewing queer Marxism talking points they don't know. Yeah, I agree with you, Rottweiler. I think that all three of these women are useful. Well, yeah, I think all three of these women are useful idiots. But it is, again, it's like interesting to see how like the talking points start out in queer Marxism and then they trickle down into like normal people. And I believe that like probably all these people are just trying to do the right thing. They're doing what they think they need to do in order to be a good person. And that's why they're in this position. But it doesn't mean it's right. It means that they've been fed talking points by a cult. And that proves the effectiveness of the cult. Because these people are not in the cult, but they're still advancing the talking points of the cult, aren't they?
so, and when you add in the fact that for these autistic, gender diverse folk, they've most likely already come out once, and it's like, oh, now I have to do it again. And I think Grace, you had said in the beginning that that a lot of autistic gender diverse folks talk about, I think what happens and what autistic gender diverse folk have reported to me with my clients is that oftentimes when they're in certain LGBTQIA communities, that people will say, oh, wait a minute, if you're autistic, you're probably just confused, like you're not really transgender. And there is a lot of invalidation even within the transgender or gender diverse community itself, because they don't understand autism. And there's this notion of, oh, well, then you're just confused. And again, my clients have really talked about how upsetting that is, because unless they're in a neurodiverse, gender diverse community, they don't feel fully accepted either way. They don't feel fully accepted in the autistic community because they might not be aware of transgender issues, and vice versa. So think about, because it's not, I don't know that this is going to be grammatically correct, but it's not equally difficult, like saying, okay, well, it's difficult to be transgender, it's difficult to be autism. When we put them together, they compound. And there's, again, you've got the double masking and the double coming out and the really unique experiences of this population.
Could it be because there's a likely chance of autism leading to confusion? I recently heard someone like pontificate on this. And what he was positing, hang on, I'll put that back on the screen. What he was positing was that because autistic people get like infatuated with things, they could get like infatuated by the gender stuff and just start thinking about it all the time. And by virtue of them thinking about it all the time and focusing on it all the time and consuming all this information about it and being in these online groups about it, and we all know that like a lot of this information, and this is especially true with kids, is getting disseminated in like these discords and like on Facebook and stuff like that, and like on Reddit, and they're going to those places, on Tumblr, all that bullshit. Like they're spending all their time in like these types of communities thinking about their gender, and by virtue of doing doing that, they convince themselves that they're genderqueer because it's all that they're consuming because they're infatuated with it. And I actually thought that that was a really intelligent way to look at it. I hadn't thought of it like that before. So maybe that is it. I also do think that autistic kids are specifically targeted by this ideology. I think they're more susceptible to it. So maybe a combination of the two.
And the fact that both populations have trauma backgrounds.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I was just thinking at the end of the presentation, or we can put it in the show notes about books, specific books that our families could read or articles so that the parents can educate themselves as well.
We will include that in our show notes for sure.
Yeah, there's a couple of good books that I can recommend. So Finn Grattan and Ava Mendez have written fantastic books about the overlap.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
One other question that occurred to me, Lori, as you were speaking is, and I've never used these.
Was this person on that I just knocked down my water can pile that I had on my desk. That you heard the noise. Was this trans person on that show with Bruce Jenner? Is this like a famous reality TV trans person? I didn't really watch that show, but like I saw like a couple episodes like in the background. I feel like this trans person is like a famous trans person or something.
These terms before, but it just came into my head: active and passive marginalization. And that, passive marginalization is everyone needs a time to come out. Everyone needs a space to transition. Families need time to transition. It's like the transgender, non-binary person, maybe the gender diverse person has, longer time experiencing themselves and have probably done years of research prior to ever walking into a therapy office.
Absolutely.
But the families may be just finding out for the first time and they need their time to transition. But it's interesting. I think there's a difference between that and like active marginalization, where you're actively saying to someone like, well, you're just confused.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be, I'm sure that your gender identity is just part and parcel with your autism spectrum disorder. That feels very active. That feels very aggressive to me.
Yeah. Yes.
Would you say that's true?
Chad.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's, that's one of the things also that we will talk to parents about when they have, I'm going back to a point that you made and what you were just saying. When a child comes out, or a young adult, so I'm using child just as an offspring, come out to a parent, let's say, we oftentimes will talk to the parents about the fact that this was a long time in coming. They didn't wake up that morning and say, hey, you know what? I'm transgender. It has been a long time of thinking and planning, and when am I going to say it, and how am I going to say it, and who am I going to come out to? And so just because the parents might not have noted the signs, it doesn't mean that the child hadn't been spending the past 2 years trying to figure out, what am I? What do I want to do? And also, my clients have had a lot of fluidity. So for instance, I've had several clients who identified as gay before they identified as anything different about their gender.
Hang on. You're welcome to do whatever you want, but I do not play this pronoun game on my channel, and I ask people not to do it in my chat because everything you say in my chat will reflect on me. I don't agree with this pronoun game that you guys are playing. I think that you should call people what they want to be called. It's just a simple, like, it's basic respect and courtesy. It's like using the name that they give you. So if you want to play these games, do it somewhere else, but don't do it here, because I'm not going to get put on some sort of hate watch list because you guys under your anonymous account want to fuck around. I don't care if people are trans. I care if people are socialists.
And now are, non-binary or transgender, but started off just identifying them. For some of them, they were 10 years old at the time, and that was really what they understood. Because I think this coming to terms sometimes with the fact that you might not be the gender that everybody keeps telling you you are, and that there isn't anything wrong with wanting to do non-traditional gender types of activities, dress, roles, etc. that there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know that we're fully there as a society yet, because I watch TikTok all the time and I just think, wow, okay,
Yeah,
still have a long way to go.
there's still a lot of discrimination out there.
Well, there's a lot of just gender stereotyping that I think people don't realize is complete gender stereotyping, and is making assumptions and putting societal odd societal beliefs onto children. You know, again, it's like, and it's that interesting. You look at all the little girls on TikTok always have the biggest possible bow in their hair, and they've always got pink Timberlands, and you know, all of this kind of stuff. And it's just like, um, and so don't. I was just thinking, it made me think of gender reveal parties, right? And I was like, don't get me started on that either. So, yeah.
And to your point, I'm so grateful today that there's more of an understanding that gender and sexual orientation are different. Why should it be so hard for a kid who maybe comes out really young, even prepubescent, and says like, I like boys, and then and maybe they're assigned male at birth, but then maybe at 16 going, and my gender doesn't quite feel male. I feel, you know,
Right.
female, or I want a more feminine presentation. It's such a shame that that has to be a trauma that they have to experience, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I think just the difference between like gender identity and gender expression is also very poorly understood. And that because assigned male at birth wears a dress doesn't make him transgendered. Doesn't make him.
See, this is the type of stuff that they're doing in, like, the reason that you're seeing these type of ideas advanced by people who are not socialists, because I don't believe that any of these women are socialists, okay? The reason you're seeing these ideas advanced by people like this is because they've had I think obviously one of them is trans, and so they have a vested interest in it. I'm gonna bet that blonde lady in the weird shirt has a trans kid or something like that, and that's why or like she has like a relative or something that was trans, and she was a do-gooder and wanted to make the world a better place, and yada da da da, and that's why she started this organization. Fine. But like the psychologist, this was in her professional development training that she's required to do in order to maintain her licensure. That's how these ideas get propagated from the queer Marxists that took over the institutions. They take over the professional development training. When they take over the institutions, they take over the organizations that say you're allowed to be a therapist, you're not allowed to be a therapist. So then your license, and I never had to get a license because I was an organizational psychologist, so I did a different type of thing that didn't require a license, which is why I never had to do any of this bullshit. But like when you're doing counseling, when you're doing clinical work, you have to do a certain number of like professional development hours in order to maintain your license. And so they take over the organizations, they take over the institutions that create the professional development training, and then they require people to go through bullshit like this. So then they start incorporating it into their clinical practice. That's how that works. All right, guys, we got maybe about 5 more minutes of this. We're not going to get through this whole presentation, but they're basically useful idiots anyway. But I got to go do my community call at 7 p.m. So we'll watch a couple more minutes of this. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Let's see if they say anything else crazy before we wrap up for the day.
A female. And that's still, it's such a hard concept for people to wrap their heads around.
Sure is.
Right. I try and do that with parents all the time. Like, you know, just because your child is expressing themselves differently or painting their nails or whatever, doesn't mean this. Like,
Right.
we want to allow our kids to express themselves. And a lot of times parents get very upset about that. And I say, listen, if this is all they want to do right now, let's support it, because we all know the parental support in all of what the three of us are doing is so crucial to the mental health of the child. So yeah, there's just a lot. You're right. LA is kind of one area, but you know, when I think about how red this country is too, come from all over the United States or the world to get help with you guys. I could understand that, because that kind of happens to us too, that we can't help everybody.
Right.
Certainly where our license is in California, but yeah, it's just so good to know that you guys are there.
Is
I
this
mean, we
woman
could
like
talk for hours because then I'm thinking about IEPs and how you go into the schools and how to
what?
what accommodations are made and like because I
There it
have
is.
kids where you were talking about where it's like the sensory is just making them nuts and they want to wear headsets and the parents are like no, and it's like what happens in an IEP? Is it then what are those accommodations or like their clothes? It's just like, and I have kids that really want to be neurodiverse
Mhm.
because they know it all, right? They says, I
Right.
want to be, but my mom doesn't believe me.
Right.
So, um,
No.
Well,
No. It does not bother me if you say bad. I shit on the psychology industry all the listen, man. I have a literal doctorate in psychology. I have a PH fucking D in psychology. I studied psychology for a long ass time. And I did it because I wanted to make things better for people and organizations because I had really shitty work experiences where I had to deal with a lot of bullshit. And I wanted to go and create better work environments where people didn't have to deal with as much bullshit because and so I studied psychology for a long ass time and it pisses me off. And I'm very good at what I do. Like there are people in this chat right now that have done like workplace training with me or like organizational training, like the corporate training that I used to spend most of my time doing. I am very good at what I do. And I know that. And my entire profession was corrupted completely by this woke bullshit. And I thank God that during the pandemic, I was able to like do the online stuff and kind of like transition away from doing the stuff I was doing in organizations because it got really bad. And part of the reason I really dug in on all this stuff, it wasn't just because I do think this is more important than that, even though I do actually think that what I'm doing now is more important than that. But it was also because my entire industry went psychotic. And so it was like, there was a period of time, maybe let's like wrap it up here. There was a period of time I could not sell normal training into workplaces because all anyone wanted to do was woke diversity training. It got in 2020, it got really hard. And so again, I thank God every day. My platform grew in 2020. I made a ton of money doing this stuff in 2020. Much more money in 2020 than now because there was an election and the pandemic was happening and people were watching a lot more YouTube then. And it was just like, I was so blessed because I would have lost my damn, like, there was a time I was like, I was actually thinking, I was like, do I just create some sort of like fake diversity training program that's really just grounded in communication and getting to know people as individuals? But I call it diversity training in order to trick people. Like that was a thought that was going through my head in 2020. But luckily I just started doing this and it all worked out. But no, you can shit on psychology all you want. I don't care. All right, guys, sadly, we're going to have to wrap it there. There is about 10 more minutes of this video on YouTube. But again, I'm not actually concerned about any of these people. These are progressives. These are useful idiots. I think the bigger lesson is that we're seeing them parrot the talking points of the queer Marxists, which is concerning because they're getting that through the training that they're having to do for their professional development. Do you think DEI will be phased out? No, DEI is never going to be phased out. What's going to happen is they're going to call it something different. That's what they do. They just change the name. So no, I don't think it'll ever be phased out. I don't think this idea that conservatives are killing DEI is accurate at all, but I don't know. We'll see on that. Guys, that is all I have for today. I have to go to a community Zoom call in like 4 minutes. If you would like to join our community Zoom call to come chat with me in a private, unrecorded call, head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And what you want to do is click on this here newsletter that I sent out yesterday. And what you do is you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the newsletter. And underneath this red box, if you are a paid supporter on my Substack, you will have the Zoom link for the Monday Substack, which is in 4 minutes. You will also have the Zoom link for the Wednesday, the Monday Substack, the Monday community Zoom call, which is in 4 minutes. You will also have the link for the Wednesday community Zoom call. Wednesday is at noon. And you can join us then as well if that time works better for you. We are also doing a Bitchcraft on Saturday at 3 p.m. right before Socialism Saturday. You will find other perks in there as well. All you need to do is sign up and support the work I'm doing at $8 a month, $80 a year. One of the perks you get is you do get 10% off everything in the Unwoke art store, not just the designs that I've got 25% off of now for the next week only, but you get all the other stuff too, to include the new Plague Doctor t-shirt, to include this communist t-shirt that I made, to include the dystopian series. I got lots of cool stuff in the Unwoke art store. If you haven't checked it out yet, I was just looking at I got my husband one of these t-shirts. He likes the Animal Farm stuff quite a bit. So I got him that. That looks really cool. You can get the socialist or gay design, which is probably my new favorite. Perfect for libertarians, the socialist or gay design. Come on. Anyway, you get all that and much more when you sign up to support my work on the Substack, which is carlin.substack.com, and I really appreciate it. We're doing Spy Stream tomorrow, 7 p.m., but I might do a pre-stream before that, but we're definitely doing Spy Stream at 7 p.m. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Have a good one. We'll see you soon.